Alright, this video is going to go along with the Treasury Stock Worksheet that you can find in Blackboard under the lecture videos and worksheets tab. So what we're going to be looking at here is we're going to be looking at those journal entries that you need to make for Treasury Stock. Now just remember that when we deal with Treasury Stock, this is when a corporation buys its own stock back. It's issued those stock, it's reacquired them from shareholders. They have not been retired. We will be using a cost method. This is where we use the cost of the shares purchased to actually value those treasury stocks. The new accounts that we will be using in this particular section are going to be the treasury stock account, which you will see me abbreviate as T/S, and then our paid in capital from treasury stock I will abbreviate as PIC-T/S. So that's kind of what we're going to be working at as far as this particular chapter is concerned. The first thing we have on our worksheet is the ABC purchases 1,000 shares of their own $1 par stock for $10. Now for treasury stock, we will be ignoring the par value. The par value does not mean anything for us when we are looking at these treasury stock values. What we're going to be looking at is what did we actually pay for them. So what was the cost? And that's what we're looking at, is that cost value. So in this particular case, was cash involved in this entry? Well, yes, cash is definitely involved in this entry because we are purchasing these shares. What is happening to cash? Well, it's going to go down, which means it will be on the bottom. It will be our credit for this particular entry. How much cash? Well, it's 1,000 shares, $10 a share, and so that is going to be $10,000. So the entry that we will have here will be for treasury stock, and again I will be abbreviating this as T/S. The other side is that cash as the credit, and it will be for this $10,000. So that's that first entry, and it is based on how much we paid for it and that cost. When we get to the next entry, we are going to be looking at selling these treasury shares back, and they're going to be sold above the cost factor. So just like when we did issuing shares in the last video and we had an excess over that par value, we're going to have an excess over the cost value here. And so what we would do is, just like we did for issuing, we would take those 500 shares. We are actually going to be getting $11 for them, and so that's going to be at that 5,500. The next one, where we normally would have done a par value, remember I said we ignore par value for treasury stock, we're going to use that cost valuation. So we will have 500 shares at $10 a share, which will give us that $5,000. And then we will have an excess here of $500. So the way that we're going to put this and make this a journal entry, we actually are selling these shares. We will sell them for cash. So that means our cash balance is going up. What we will be looking at is cash. It's going to be at that $5,500 amount. And then what we will do after that is we have to look at the treasury stock. Now, treasury stock is always valued at that cost value. So the cost value that we have here is at that $5,000. So we have a debit for $5,500. We have our treasury stock, which is the credit for $5,000. We need the other $500 to balance our debits and credits. And the excess amount there is going to be that paid in capital from treasury stock. And so we will abbreviate that as PIC, TS is what the abbreviation would be there. Now this is what we have when we are looking at this. So what we'll see is for treasury stock right now, we started with $10,000 in treasury stock, and we now have that $5,000 that has come out. We also are looking at our paid-in capital for treasury stock, and that is going to be valued at that $500. So then we get to the next entry, and this is where we are actually going to sell 100 shares of treasury stock for $10. Now remember, that $10 is what our cost was. So if we have 1,000 or 100 shares times 10, that gives us that $1,000. And then our cost was at the 10, so that's 1,000. So we have no excess here. So what we would have is we are going to be getting cash in, and the cash we're getting in is the amount of $1,000. And the other side is that we are selling those treasury stock, and so we no longer have that $1,000 worth of treasury stock. So now when we get finished with this particular entry, you know, we started with the 10,000, we had the 5,000, now we're down to $1,000. And as far as our treasury stock is concerned, this one did not do anything with our paid-in capital for treasury stock, so it is still sitting at the $500. The next entry that we're going to look at, and it's the last entry that we have, is when we sell shares for below cost. You know, the cost here was $10. We actually are only selling it for $8, so it would be below cost. I am looking at the remaining shares. So when I look at the remaining shares here, what I'm looking at is I purchased 1,000, I have sold 500, I sold another 100. So what I have left to sell are 400 shares. So I would look at the 400 shares times that $8 is what I'm going to be getting for it. So I'm actually going to be getting cash of $3,200. But the cost of these were at $10 a piece. So that cost is at $4,000. So I have a deficit. Now normally we look at this and we have an excess. This one we actually are looking at a deficit. We don't have enough. When we have a deficit, there are a couple of things that we have to look at. And the first thing you will look at is you are going to look at your paid-in capital treasury stock account. So let's take a look at that particular account right now. And what we will find is that we have $500 in that account. So that is the first place that we are going to go. We are going to go to that paid-in capital treasury stock account, and we will use the amount that we have there. In this case, it's not enough, so we have to use all of it. So we're going to be using the whole thing. We get down to where we have a zero balance. We still have a deficit. The second place that you would go after you use everything that's in paid-in capital treasury stock, you then will take it out of retained earnings. So the retained earnings amount is going to be where that $300 that was left is going to be coming from. So the way this looks for this particular journal entry, we will be looking at the fact that we are getting cash in, and the amount of cash is $3,200. That treasury stock is valued at the cost value, which was that $4,000. And if we actually look at, you know, these accounts here, as I said, we started with 10,000, we did 5,000, we had another 1,000, now we're at 4,000. So now we are actually at zero because we have gotten rid of all the treasury stock that we had purchased. Again, first place we look, if we have this deficit, is into that paid-in capital treasury stock account. And so that is where we're going to be, because you'll notice that here my debits are $3,200, my credits are $4,000. So I do have to use, and we'll be looking at that $5,000 or $500 that was in that paid-in capital treasury stock first. I'm still not in balance, so the next place I go is that retained earnings account for that $300. I now have my debits and my credits in balance. And so that would be how I would look at a below cost entry for treasury stock. So hopefully after looking at the worksheet, working the worksheet along with me with this video, I recommend that you then go back in and rework this worksheet before you get ready to take your test, so that you have a full understanding and make sure you understand all the material. There is an answer key out there for the worksheet as well, so make sure you take a look at that answer key once you work it, and see what you understand and what you don't understand. And I would definitely advise you to do that before taking that very first test.